All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of On the Record, the Unconfiscatable Conference Sponsor Series. And on this episode, I have two guests joining me, both working over at Braiins, helping to keep our Bitcoin secure through mining. We're going to talk about all that, Slush, Braiins, the system. And also, they both have very popular Twitter accounts independently. So I'd like to welcome Zack and also BTC Gandalf to the show. Gandalf has a podcast, and he is in his podcast gear. Hey guys, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having us here. It's good to be on the show.
Awesome.
Hey Ted. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Sweet. All right, let's do a very quick personal introduction, and also, and then we'll talk about how you guys ended up at Braiins, and then we're going to talk specifically about Braiins. I want to learn more. I'm sure my audience wants to learn more, and looking forward to seeing you guys in person over at the conference in a couple of days. All right, so I'm going to go over to screen share so I can pull up their Twitter profiles. And of course, our conference where they will both be speakers. We have Zack and BTC Gandalf right there. Come join us in Las Vegas for Unconfiscatable in about 2.5 weeks. There they are right there as a sponsor for the event. All right, so let's begin with you, Zack, first. Tell us a little about yourself, how you got into crypto, and how you ended up connected with Braiins.
Yeah. So disclaimer first, I guess my Twitter is a little bit all over the place. It's mostly like a receptacle for brain overflow. If there's like ideas or opinions, that don't go anywhere else, they're just sort of end up on my Twitter feed for better or worse. Let's see. The origin story of me getting into Bitcoin started back in college. I kind of got lucky and was living with a comp sci roommate. I was studying politics, philosophy, economics at the time. And he just said, he'd been in Bitcoin for a couple of years. He said, you might be interested in this. And turns out he was right. My original career path was law school. And after undergrad, I worked in some law and policy circles in DC for a bit while prepping law school materials, and Bitcoin stuff just took up more and more of my free time and mental bandwidth. And then a friend, Catherine Wu, said, hey, you should come join this startup I just joined in New York, a general crypto data company called Messari. And I thought, hey, law school can wait a bit. So I took the job, and that's sort of how I got into the space full time at first. And then after Messari, I sort of went around and worked with a couple different teams for a couple years at a time. I spent some time at Blockstream, and then I sort of just wrote about everything and anything in Bitcoin that interested me at CoinDesk for a bit. And through CoinDesk, I sort of realized that one of the most interesting and most active sectors of Bitcoin right now is, and will be for a while, mining. And that really piqued my interest in I kind of set my goal to be in mining for the indefinite future. And at that point, I was just writing about it and sort of tracking everything that was going on. And then I took a job at Compass Mining, a retail focused mining company, to sort of help them build a brand and bring mining to retail, and sort of buck or change a trend that had pushed mining to be more and more institutionalized and industrialized. And then just earlier this year, I moved over to Braiins to sort of continue that same mission. Braiins is a little bit more aligned with my goals and vision for the space. But both teams very high quality, and I just love mining. I think I was pretty right that mining is going to be the standout sector in Bitcoin for a while, and it has proven to be so, and it will be for a while. Everyone wants a piece of mining, from retail miners in their garages to oil and gas companies to nation states. And I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that detail. Yeah, I remember you being at Compass because I was doing events in Dubai, and then there was a mining event in Dubai where some of the people that were there for my event went out there. like Ben Gagnon and a couple of other miners. And you guys were hosting like a cruise as well. And I remember your name as being as one of like the like somebody involved in that. And it's great to have you with Braiins as well. Compass is awesome. I have friends there, but I've known the guys at Slush and now Braiins for a long, long time. So that's awesome. All right, BTC Gandalf, what about your story? You're doing a lot of stuff in this space as well with several podcasts. So there it is. All these links are in the video description, by the way, guys.
Yeah, so I first heard about Bitcoin and I think it was 2016 or 2017. I used to work in real estate and I had a client that I was talking to and he was telling me about Bitcoin and Ethereum. So I did the typical, like probably read a couple of mainstream media articles about it and decided that it was all about blockchain, not Bitcoin, and that the whole thing was a tulip bubble, and just proceeded to sort of keep an eye on it, but didn't do anything. And then I saw it crash in 2018 and I felt vindicated and correct. And I was like, see, I told you so to everyone that was talking about Bitcoin. But when the price went back up to 10K in 2019, I was like, okay, there's something here that I'm missing. So I need to look into this some more. So what I did was I bought some Bitcoin just to have some skin in the game. And then it took me about another year to the end of 2020 to actually have time to start looking into it. And I watched, I think it was Michael Saylor on Real Vision with Raoul Pal. That video like delivered the orange pill. And I had some time on my hands. So I started this Twitter account and started tweeting. And I pretty much spent 12 hours a day listening to podcasts, reading and tweeting, and then eventually saw that Braiins was trying to hire for somebody to do social media marketing, and I applied and got the gig, and here we are. But yeah, obviously since then I started a podcast as well that I just do for fun, and I'm also the managing director at the BTC Times.
All right,
Gandalf is one of the most prolific tweeters I've seen on Bitcoin Twitter. It's amazing how much content he can put out. So I love, like, if you're not following Gandalf, do it. He's a great account.
Yeah, and you guys get to see them at Unconfiscatable. We're gonna have a panel called "Making Bitcoin Fun Again" with BTC Gandalf and the crypto couple, and we'll see who else can join that, because it can be a very serious environment sometimes, and I'm more on the serious environment side with everything that Bitcoin can do. All right, so let's move the gears over. By the way, guys, if you are on the Unconfiscatable.com site, you can just click on the Braiins logo to take you to the website. Let's talk about these because there's always lots of confusion. Slush pool versus Braiins. So let's clear that up. Slush pool is a mining pool, and Braiins is pretty much the parent entity. And they used to be called Braiins OS, but I think you guys slightly rebranded that. So who wants to give us, the history of Slush and Braiins and how people are to think of these entities?
Sure. Yeah. Just like a quick overview. Sometimes, the structure can be a little bit confusing, but Slush Pool is just a product of Braiins. Slush Pool was one of the first mining pools and is, the oldest still operational mining pool in Bitcoin.
I believe it was the first mining pool.
Yeah, quite a lot of history there. And Braiins is a company building tools for miners, and Slush Pool just last year, I believe Braiins acquired remaining ownership of Slush Pool, but it's just one of several products that Braiins is building. The best way to think about Braiins is as a team building tools for miners, and with the growing size just of hash rate and active participants in the mining market, and also the variety and complexity of the different actors in the mining market, their needs and infrastructural demands. Basically, Braiins wants to help meet as many of those use cases as possible by building tools for them, from basic pool services to custom firmware to data mining and mining data, and analytics, and more products being announced, within the next year or two. So yeah, Braiins is the parent company. Slush Pool is one of the products, and Braiins OS is one of the firmware products. that's being developed and customized for increasingly growing number of ASIC models.
All right, that's a great overview. And I know you mentioned Blockstream earlier. You worked there. We are big fans of Blockstream. And that's another way to think about it. Like Blockstream is the parent company that builds all of these services from Lightning infrastructure to second layer solutions to the hardware wallet that every single attendee is going to get by attending the conference. So is it a bit similar to that?
Yeah, a bit similar. I love the team at Blockstream. They have so many cool products. And yeah, it's a similar structure.
All right, cool. So let's talk a little bit about, drop screen share unless, but if there's a link you want me to pull up, let me know. So let's talk about, let's do higher level first, right? So let's talk about some of the latest products that Braiins is working on. Like, what are some of the big things that people should pay attention to? I do want to talk about Stratum version 2. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit later when we talk specifically about the Slush mining pool. But what are some of those, like in more detail, specific things that people should be looking out for that Braiins is working on?
Yeah, for sure. I can hop in first really quick. One really cool product that's sort of near and dear to my heart, even though like I just recently joined the team, is the Braiins Mining Insights data dashboard. For the longest time, and it's still pretty prevalent today, mining as just a sector of Bitcoin has kind of had this like cloak of obfuscation, or it's just like, I don't know, mysterious to people, because in many cases the data is hard to parse and difficult to collect. And so the Mining Insights, actually, I think you can just go to burr.info with 3 R's. I think they redirected that domain to the Mining Insights dashboard, or it's just available on the Braiins homepage. Collects machine prices, hash rate and hash price data, mining pool data, all these sorts of key important data sets that miners should have easy access to and keep tabs on, with more being added incrementally in the future. To present just like a quick overview and as detailed as you really want it to be, look at mining economics, the state of the network, and some key data points on participants in the network. So Dan Frumkin, who pioneered this project at Braiins, he's one of the key contributors and developers behind it. And it's just awesome to see how much has been built out to date, and it's cool to see where he plans to take it in the future. But if you ever need like a data set for mining, or just a quick overview of the mining industry at any particular point in time, the Braiins Mining Insight data tools are an excellent tool for that.
So, wow, it must have been a while since I've looked at mining hash rates. What is Foundry USA Pool? Wow, they took over the number one spot in hash rate.
It's Uncle Barry.
Yeah, Foundry has seen some insane growth for a couple different reasons over the past year.
Who runs that?
Foundry is in the DCG family.
Oh, that's Barry Silbert. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the whole team over there, including Kevin Zhang, have really built a very strong mining ecosystem over there. And in no small part, a lot of their growth has also been catalyzed by the enormous shift in hash rate in general from Asia to the Americas, specifically North America, Canada, and the US. But that's overflown not just to Foundry, to other pools as well, like F2 and Poolin and Slush and some others. But yeah, Foundry, I think towards the middle of last year broke into the top 10, or maybe it was top 5. I can't remember, but they've had a crazy growth trajectory over the past year. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just on my stream earlier today. I just pulled up a historical chart, and I actually marked the day when ghash.io, it's probably before your time, you probably were still in college, ghash.io reached 50.1% of the hash rate, and it was like the world was going to end. So I have it marked down. I mean, it was completely like complete misunderstanding of how mining and mining pools work, and at the time, and it created this big panic. And that pool did not exist within a year. Like everyone just left and left and left and kept leaving. And I've always been disappointed as to how low Slush pool is on these rankings, because when I was mining for a little bit, I was supporting Slush pool. I know you guys are one of the most honest pools there is. You never take, any pieces of it. You always like to like, it's just like your reputation has been stellar since the pool system began, because you guys kind of created this system. So I always wanted to see you guys at the top of this list. Is it the geographical region? Is it like Chinese want to mine on Chinese pools and Americans now want to just mine on American pools? Is that the main catalyst for this?
There's a few different catalysts. I mean, top 10 pool is nothing to sneeze at, but there's Slush also has had a pretty strong growth curve of added hash rate over the past, I guess, like 12 to 18 months. But yeah, growth is steady, even if at a slightly slower pace than some of the other pools like Foundry. And you also see some hash rate that went offline for several months from Ant pool and an F2 pool, relocate and, I guess out of loyalty or whatever, come back to those pools. So there's a shuffle. There's some hash rate that wasn't reallocated, a bunch of different things. But yeah, Slush pool is an amazing pool, and there's some unique differentiation among some of the pool brands. It's become clear over the past, year or so. Some pools target, what you might call the suit miners with like institutional mining operations. Other pools have a much stronger rapport with what you might brand as the pleb miners, just sort of smaller scale retail miners. And Braiins Slush pool has a strong mix of both, but definitely has an outsized portion of its hash rate just in terms of like headcount. From retail miners who appreciate our brand, the work we do in the space, and the variety of products we build, not just the pool service, but custom firmware and data tools and other things.
Yeah, I think one of the other things is we're kind of like, how a lot of Bitcoin maximalists like to use like a Bitcoin only exchange. We're sort of that version of for pools. So we have a very small Zcash pool that's sort of legacy that's still running, but our focus is on Bitcoin, whilst a lot of the other pools are focusing on Bitcoin and also other cryptocurrencies.
Oh, that's okay. Zcash is going to go proof of stake soon enough, so you'll be able to decommission that and stop wasting engineering time.
Yeah.
All right. No, this is great. I did not know about this website, so this is good for a bunch of insight. And the insight on mining has been badly needed in order to combat all this FUD coming from the government about how Bitcoin mining is going to destroy the world. Not to mention that the energy used for Bitcoin mining is like 0.1% of all the world's energy or whatever it is. Michael Saylor has been trying to, spread the truth, how the majority of mining is using green energy, and when it's not using green energy, it's generally using energy that would have otherwise been wasted. Mining is getting very efficient overall. I moderated a panel on immersion cooling, and I learned a hell of a lot. And that's where the world's going when it comes to mining. So what have you guys been doing, and have you seen any results from trying to combat this FUD? And most of it is coming from within the crypto space, by the way. It's the people in crypto that just want Bitcoin to die. For years, I've been, associating. It's like the game of Survivor. When you're watching on TV, you start watching Survivor, it's like 20 players or whatever. And at first you want to get rid of the dead weight. Okay, these guys are clearly idiots. They're going to die if we let them keep playing. So let's get rid of the dead weight. And now when you're down to like the top 8 players, you're like, it's time to vote out the strong guy, because otherwise we have no shot. So Bitcoin is kind of like in that position where people within the crypto space constantly want to take Bitcoin down. So what are your thoughts on all that, and how's this battle going?
Yeah, it's a tough battle for sure. It's a common saying. I don't know necessarily where it originated, but facts don't always win the day. And that's definitely true of a lot of the Bitcoin mining conversations. And you're right, there's a lot of heat on Bitcoin mining's just like general energy consumption from outside the crypto industry as well as inside the crypto industry. And that second sort of demographic doesn't really make a ton of sense to me, but it is, sort of out of jealousy or just sort of trying to position to gain larger market share, any number of reasons. But with specific regard to like types of energy, the Braiins account put out a tweet, meaning Gandalf put out a tweet the other week about like what the future of Bitcoin energy looks like. And Bitcoin mining is not only like location agnostic, meaning they will mine anywhere you can find energy. It's also like energy category agnostic. So the future of Bitcoin mining looks like oil and gas and coal and nuclear and solar and wind and geothermal and everything, blends of it, or just like one or two exclusively used to power mining operations. The only thing that really matters first and foremost is cost of production, and the rest is sort of more or less an afterthought. But Bitcoin mining is a insanely powerful tool for making energy markets more efficient and larger and more robust. So if you are like a fan of natural gas, coal, which you might call like traditional or maybe even dirty energy sources, Bitcoin mining has enormous performance improvements, efficiency enhancements, just basically overall operational improvements for those types of energies. If you're a big, what you might label green energy advocate, Bitcoin mining is a huge improvement on the economics of building these sources of energy that allow massive expansion and basically save the economics of these sorts of energy generation operations. So the FUD is, it's like pretty brainless at times. But one of the ways that Braiins has been, making its voice heard in, the growing orchestra of mining voices combating this is through our blog, which has contributors from all across the Braiins team writing high signal, low noise, very impactful, dense pieces on a variety of topics about the industry. They range from basic mechanics and functionality of the mining network or the mining industry and the Bitcoin network to very in-depth dives on like the economics of solar mining or optimizing your energy consumption with custom firmware or different other aspects of the mining operation. So it's a pretty exhaustive library of dense pieces with mining knowledge for everyone from beginners to super seasoned miners. One of the best educational resources in mining out there, in my opinion. But yeah, I don't know. Sorry, Gandalf, if you have want to jump in there too.
No, it's good. I saw the careers tab, and hey, if anyone's looking for a job, clearly they're hiring.
Yeah, please apply. Lots of open roles there.
Yeah, we need help. We need engineers. We need help with if we want to support more mining models, we need hands on deck to help us develop the firmware. So for all those people who are always tweeting at us saying when MicroBT what's miner or whatever, send your software developer friends to braiins.com to the careers tab and get them to apply for a job and come help us build it.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so let's talk about let's talk about the Braiins OS real quick, and then we're going to move on to Stratum too. So these are the topics I really want to hit on. So just quick overview, and then we're going to move on to we have to explain what Stratum version 1 is, and then we're going to move on to 2.
Zach, you want to take the Stratum question? That's probably a little bit above my pay grade.
Yeah, we can jump right on Stratum. So before we move on to Stratum version 2, let's talk about Stratum version 1, which was basically the original firmware or software, I don't know how you want to call it, that allowed a mining pool to exist.
Yeah, it's Stratum is sort of the original or de facto mining communication network, I guess, for miners, mining network participants, and that's V1. V2, also probably should mention it's an open source project. V2, which has a couple different contributors, some independently funded developers by, I believe Square gave one Strato developer a grant. There's also dev work being done by the team at Galaxy Digital, and of course the Braiins team. Basically, V2's goal, and I want to keep it at a high level here because I'll admit if we go too deep into the technicals of V2, I'm a little bit out of my depth. But V2 is targeting significant data efficiency improvements and stronger encryption tooling for general operational efficiency and security of the mining network. That goes for like block relays, decentralization, and overall security. So the V2 is still in progress. The dev work is ongoing, and for some people, maybe at a little bit of a slower pace than is ideal, but slow and steady is always better than sort of fast and loose. So yeah, that's the general overview at a high level. And V2, coming obviously many years after V1 was initially launched, but with some significant improvements.
Is anyone already using V2?
Not to my knowledge, except maybe in initial dev testing.
Okay, because I've had this presentation for quite a while. Probably 2 years ongoing now, because Stratum version 2 has been around. Hopefully to get used soon. And this is my Bitcoin is decentralized presentation. And in the section about mining, basically the way I explain the future, once every single mining pool starts using Stratum version 2, and you can see the screenshot is before Foundry even existed. So that tells you how old this presentation is. The Stratum version 2 would allow the individual miner inside the pool to choose the transactions that go into a block instead of outsourcing it to the pool operator. And this will greatly help overall Bitcoin decentralization by making mining more decentralized with more control to the individual miner connected to a pool, which in a way would now allow a pool to have more than a 50% hash rate as long as they're using Stratum version 2, but that's still not an ideal situation.
Yeah, the transaction selection is key. A couple minutes ago, we mentioned sort of the age-old mining pool centralization FUD that really has no basis in reality, but for whatever reason is just sort of lingers around and never really goes away. But the transaction selection feature of V2 when it fully launches will it will make even less sense and be even less it'll just be ridiculous to claim any sort of centralization risk from mining pool operations at all. So right now, this is a great diagram. On the left side there, you see categorical hash rate broken down by pool, but that will become even more granular as individual miners will be able to select specific transactions to include in blocks through their pool. And it'll basically result something similar to what you have illustrated on the right there. But I don't know, the mining pool centralization FUD always irks me. Makes absolutely no sense. Transaction selection will be, kind of the last nail in the coffin of anyone trying to revive that narrative, though.
Yeah, and since I did kind of just brought up this presentation that I've done all over the world, at a high level, real quick, it's 15-20-minute presentation about what makes Bitcoin decentralized. And I break it down as a 3-part triangle: the code, the mining, and the nodes. So each of these have are a necessary function to keep Bitcoin decentralized. So even if 2 parts happen to collude, it can still be centralization can still be prevented with the 3rd part of the triangle. Nodes force the miners to do the user-activated soft fork. Nodes, to me, it's hard to say which is most important. Without any of these, the system dies. If there are no coders and there's a bug and there's nobody to fix it, Bitcoin dies. If there's no mining, Bitcoin dies. And if there's no nodes, Bitcoin dies. But each one could also, so it's a 3-part triangle, but then within, and the presentation talks about how inside each of the triangles, you also have very significant decentralization greater than in any other project, based on how many Bitcoin Core developers. And by the way, this is another project that I wish somebody would do. I literally only had 2 pictures from the last 7 years of which Bitcoin Core developers contributed how many lines of code, how many of those lines of code were removed. All the data is there. All the commits to Bitcoin are there, and no one is going through this data. We have people like Willy Woo and others going through on-chain pricing data. We have you guys going through the mining data. It's all public data, but there is nobody there providing proper statistics on Bitcoin code development, which is unfortunate because I would have loved to point to it. I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I will say, I do see, I guess he maybe does it like on an annual basis, but I do see Jameson Lopp resurface these statistics, like number of contributors per release, but nothing like visualized quite to this extent. This would be beautiful to have updated on a regular basis.
Right. Nothing like this, nothing like an interface where you're like, at least even on an annual basis, just so you can see it evolve over time, and which developers become they have more commits than others. So so I just go through that, talk about the differences during the fork and stuff, and overall the Bitcoin layer, just like how everything is being built. All these layers, like Lightning is like down here somewhere. Like there's Liquid, and like one of these graphs, Lucas Nuzzi is promising to make this more interactive, where you can click on each one of these parts and then you can get more data within each one. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about it too much, but then we go into the mining side of it. And I talk about how mining itself is pretty decentralized, unless you're Doge or Zcash. But and then I love this, where I'm quoting Vitalik somewhere here, where basically Vitalik is going to send out a tweet saying, hey, can you all stop mining? Kind of like he did a while ago. Hey, can you all stop trading? And then finally, I talk about the decentralization of the nodes. So that's basically the entire presentation.
Yeah, this is all awesome data. I guess like people forget that. So it is like a trifecta of, sort of more or less equal power distributed between those two groups. But I guess if I had to like pick one group to be sort of at the bottom of the totem pole, I would probably pick miners. Like miners are the service industry of the Bitcoin community. They group transactions, add them to the blockchain, and receive what basically amounts to tips for their work. And they play an important function. Don't get me wrong, but they are the service industry of the Bitcoin network, and pools are a service for miners. And sort of like the key element of the misconception around mining pool centralization FUD is that hash rate is somehow sort of like committed or locked into these pools and the pools control it, when that's not even the case at all. The pool you mentioned years ago, before I even was in Bitcoin, that sort of disappeared once it crept just over the 50% hash rate threshold, is a perfect example. And even much more recently, last year or 2 years ago, we saw OKX pool just implode completely, lose over 80%, maybe 90% of its hash rate when there were worries about its operations and regulatory concerns and all that stuff. It is insanely trivial to move your hash rate from one pool to another pool. Miners are in no way locked into like one pool. And if they were, that would give credence to the centralization concerns. But miners, it's like, more or less subscribing or following a Twitter account. Like you can follow and unfollow with a couple clicks. In Twitter, one click, but like with mining pools, switch hash rate with a couple clicks and a couple, text boxes, and you're mining again. There is absolutely no centralization concern from having, a ton of hash rate pointed at one pool, because it can be just as quickly pointed to another pool. If miners, get scared or worried or disagree with the principles or operations of a pool, it's trivial.
Yeah, go ahead, Gandalf.
I was just going to say that the whole environmental FUD or the mining centralization FUD, they're great examples of Brandolini's law, where the amount. I think I'm not sure if I'm allowed to swear on this pod, Tone, but
you can.
it's basically, it just says
Again,
the
like
amount.
anything is allowed. It's you just can't talk about freedom. But other than that, you remember it's YouTube, right?
Yeah, true.
You could probably go commando instead of your current outfit. That'd be fine. But God forbid you talk about freedom.
Yeah, so Brandolini's law is it says the amount of energy needed to refute bullshit is an order of magnitude larger than the amount of energy needed to produce it. So we're fighting the bullshit with truth, but it's easy for some narrative to pop up that says like that Bitcoin's bad for the environment, or that there's Chinese mining centralization, and that just catches on, and you can throw all the data you want at it, but somehow these narratives stick around for 5, 6, 7, 8, or however many years that they've been around, which is a bit bizarre.
All right, my questions keep coming up. I don't want to forget like our live stream questions. So somebody, I don't know if you can answer this. Someone asked, how come you guys aren't supporting S17s yet?
So I don't know about like where in the queue S17 firmware is. I know WhatsMiner firmware is coming soon, but for S17s,
no, we don't.
It's on a high priority list, right?
No. We currently supporting S19, S19 Pro, S19J Pro, T19, S17, S17 Pro, S17 Plus, a variety of the 17 series.
I'm sorry. It was S15. The person corrected himself in the following. I guess that's
S15.
I think makes more sense.
I'm not familiar with the S15. That's before my time, but probably because we're working on newer models rather than going back and supporting older ones.
It's actually amazing how the S9s are like back in action now that the price of Bitcoin went up so high. And that's another amazing thing about mining. It's like I know Bitcoin has bottomed when all of a sudden every other article in publications is mining is about to die. It is no longer profitable to mine Bitcoin. And now we're in a completely opposite situation where you can buy a miner from 2014, 2015 days, and it's actually profitable.
Yeah. So if you actually just scroll up on the screen here, you like Braiins shows you the exact electricity price you need just right there. Yeah. To break even or up just a little bit more. There you go. Yeah. So wherever you're mining, if you're mining at home or if you're trying to sign right there, the profitability of popular, SHA-256 ASICs, you can look at miners and basically calculate at a glance, can I mine profitably at whatever power price you have, whether it's like merchant power or a more industrial purchase power agreement, and screenshot this. And, it's right above it also is the hash price, which is sort of a derivative metric of mining revenue with hash rate growth or by default difficulty growth. So hash price or electricity break-even prices are two very simple metrics that anyone can pull up to determine, can I actually mine profitably, or am I, mining at a loss if I plug in this type of machine with this power cost? Awesome data to have easy access to.
Isn't it incredible how hash rate is at this ridiculous all-time high?
Yeah, it is. It is really awesome. My favorite thing about that recovery, honestly, is that it's not. So there's obviously a ton of headlines about the China ban and the subsequent hash rate crash and market crash and all these sorts of things. But the majority of the hash rate there in that rebound is, or at least half of it is not, China hash rate coming back online in other places of the world. It's massive growth in North American mining operations. With builds coming online that were started 2-3 years ago and are now just being completed, and the machines are being plugged in and miners are actually hashing. To be sure, a chunk of China, of hash rate formerly in China is coming back online, but a lot of it is still dislocated. So when that comes online, hash rate is going to soar even more. But the amount of hash rate growth in North America over the past 12 to 18 months has been insane. And the hash rate all-time highs sort of indicate that.
All right. Oh, so speaking of the China ban on mining and all the miners having to move and find new homes, we had a debate on my news show, which I don't barely do these days, mostly between myself and Bitcoin Mechanic, where he saw the China ban as a good thing. for a couple of reasons. One, everyone, the whole China fund, and like you said, like all the mining taking place in China never bothered me personally. But it did help with the China fund. Nouriel Roubini's best, statement, like, oh, it's all mined in China and all sort of stuff. But the bigger thing is he wants countries to act as tyrannical and adversarial to Bitcoin because it proves Bitcoin's resiliency. And my argument was that the China ban is a bit of a problem because Bitcoin was more geographically decentralized and adversarial, because most of the development of Bitcoin does take place in the United States and in the West in general. You have most of the nodes are running in the US and the West in general. And by West, I mean Western Europe. And there is a very large Bitcoin concentration. Now, because Bitcoin is not proof of stake, the concentration of Bitcoin doesn't matter until it matters, until some president signs an executive order confiscating all the Bitcoins from every American regulated institution. And suddenly the US government is in possession of 45% of all the Bitcoin, which is a concern for me as a reincarnation of the 1933 Gold Confiscation Act, because people didn't hold on to their Bitcoin, they held them to their gold, they held it at the banks, and we're having the same exact situation now. And mining was the one thing that the US had absolutely no control of because it was all in China. And suddenly it's all in the US. And you have these pools like in the top 10, like Mara, that are censoring transactions, but that's a whole separate issue I would love to ask. So let's talk about what is your view on all this mining going out of China. Do you think it's good for Bitcoin or bad for Bitcoin?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it's interesting you mentioned Bitcoin Mechanic. I was on a show with him on Adam Meister's show, and he expressed a similar opinion that he enjoys sort of attacks on the Bitcoin network because it makes it, anti-fragile and stronger and all these sorts of things. And I think there's, he's right to an extent. Like Bitcoin does thrive often in adversarial environments, but we don't necessarily want to wish for life to be harder for us as Bitcoiners and network participants and miners and all these sorts of things. In general, I think there's two ways to think about the China ban, sort of at like the overall network level and at the individual operator level. At the overall network level, I think it was long-term a benefit for the network because it decentralized hash rate across the world with a forcing function, the China ban that we've sort of never really seen come to bear on one sector of the industry before. And now you have hash rates scattered all over the globe. North America and Canada and the US, countries in Latin America, parts of Africa are growing their mining operations quite large, and all across Europe as well. And there's still significant hash rate in Asia, just not in China. But the second level to look at is the individual operator level. And in that sense, it was obviously very much a bad thing. Miners had an extremely difficult time, figuring out how to move and relocate their machines. Obviously, significant capital investment in building the farms that were operating for years in China, and then struggling to find available rack space and power to actually bring them back online and hashing again, many of which have not been successfully relocated still. So it's tricky for the network. Yes, hash rate is more decentralized now, but lots of miners have had life made incredibly difficult for them, and they're still not out of the woods yet. So it depends on how you look at it. I definitely don't wish for these sorts of things to happen routinely, but long term, I think it probably on balance has been a positive development for the network, even though lots of people have kind of gotten shafted by the ban.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like something like that is where before you might have had like a lot of the Bitcoin's being mined in China. Now it's a lot of the Bitcoin is being mined in the US or in North America. And I understand there's also other, a lot of Bitcoin activity in general happens in North America. So bringing mining on top of that to North America might have a strong centralizing force on it. But at the same time, I think it also entrenches Bitcoin like in the economy and politically, and it can almost maybe become something that's like too big to confiscate, or too big to fail. There's too much capital and maybe even political influence behind Bitcoin and Bitcoin companies, such that a seizure like that, it might be unlikely.
All right, and now let's talk a little bit about regulation. I do want to try to keep this interview to an hour. I know we can talk all day about mining. So another area of concern, especially for us Bitcoin purists, is what kind of regulation is going to come down on the mining sector, especially when it comes to processing transactions. We've already seen mining pools censor certain transactions by not processing them. Now, at the end of the day, they're only costing themselves potential money in transaction fees. And as time goes on, these transaction fees become more and more important. Also, as these problems become more and more prevalent, the Bitcoin core developers will prioritize more privacy. Privacy has not really been on the highest area of concern, but it is starting to, especially what we're seeing out of Canada and more censorship. So where do we stand with that? What are your views on this? I know you're working for a mining pool, but you're not a US pool. Have you guys had to deal with these issues, or is this something that is being discussed? It's a sensitive topic, but if you can comment on it, would be great.
Yeah, for sure. So I think regardless of what type of mining business any individual operates, regulation is always a concern, because like mining in particular has been at the forefront of all Bitcoin narratives for the past year plus. And we've seen, some unique approaches to tackling this. We've seen many large American-based mining companies sort of build an industry coalition, the Bitcoin Mining Council, to sort of provide a unified voice if and when they're sort of targeted by these lawmakers and regulators. We've seen initiatives sort of to proactively try and in some way be compliant with Mara's transaction censorship initiative, which I will say they phased that out after kind of realizing it just wouldn't work. And I think they got a new CEO after that also. And Fred, the new CEO at Mara, is a good guy. And no mining company is perfect, but he definitely has a better handle on sort of the basic operations of how to run a mining company and a pool in their case also. But like regulation in many ways is a big open question for miners. There was a memo put out by Coin Center, I believe, a DC-based advocacy group, that there is no, pending legislation targeting miners in U.S. congressional bodies right now. But there always could be, right? Like there's obviously a scale on which some governments are more or less likely to sort of repeat a China situation where they just, sort of call it quits and kick out all miners. I'd say the U.S. is probably less likely than most to see that happen. But for the longest time, Kazakhstan was a popular destination for a lot of Bitcoin hash rate. Even if they weren't like the most overtly welcoming, they were a very friendly, suitable place to set up a mining farm. And now there's lots of miners there that are just getting wrecked by steep changes in the country's regulations, and it could happen anywhere. So I guess what I'm saying is, for any miner, having some sort of grasp on how you're accounting or hedging for regulatory risk is essential. Where that risk will come from and when, is pretty impossible to predict. It's always a possibility for any country, just because governments are unpredictable and, influenced by things outside, in many cases, the control of miners. So not a great answer to your question there. Who knows, really? But it's always a risk everywhere, even if some governments have a less, short-term likelihood of copying something like China. So, yeah.
And it seems like the U.S. has a good, a group of representatives or senators who are pushing against the sort of the broker definition in the infrastructure bill that would affect people like miners, and trying to basically protect the sort of, I guess, the fallout, which would be miners, the fallout of having that infrastructure bill and that wording put in there. I think at the end of January there was 11 representatives that have been basically pushing for an amendment or pushing for another bill that allows some discretion as to who qualifies as a broker in order to protect people like miners and stakers.
I'll add one more thing. I think like there are parallels to this across the Bitcoin industry, but and some very large successful miners already had this sorted before the China event. Many did not, and many are sort of realizing now it's a winning strategy. But in the same way, you wouldn't store all of your Bitcoins on one wallet. You definitely probably don't want to store all your hash rate in one jurisdiction, right? So you have some operations in parts of Asia, some in parts of Europe, some in parts of North America, some in parts of Latin America, or any sort of like combination of that. So if one jurisdiction or one country, sort of turns against miners unexpectedly, your whole operation or the totality of your hash rate doesn't instantly go offline. And you are hedged against that possibility because it is very difficult to predict. And so miners are increasingly diversifying the locations in which they set up mining operations, and that can only be a winning strategy.
All right, awesome. All right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up the show. I got a bunch of questions in that I wanted to ask. I don't see much out of the live stream audience, so I'm gonna jump back onto screen share just to let you guys say goodbyes and pull up your handles one more time. And of course, you can meet them both in person at the upcoming Unconfiscatable conference taking place in Las Vegas at the D Hotel. March 3rd is our poker game. Either of you guys gonna play?
Tentative, not sure.
I think I am, but I'm gonna be I think what you call the fish. So I'll just get taken for my sats.
You'd be surprised, man. It's a tournament anyway, and it's gonna be very fast moving. You'd be surprised, man. And we got awesome prizes for the further you make it, up towards the final table. It's gonna be great.
Nice. So, I'll probably play.
It's not expensive. It's only about $400.
Yep, I'll probably play.
Excellent. All right, so you guys can meet them at the upcoming Unconfiscatable conference. Zack, Gandalf, thanks again for joining us. We're gonna let you say your goodbye, Zack. I'll pull up your Twitter one more time for people to follow and give us a close.
Thanks so much for having me and us on. Super fun conversation. And yeah, there's so much to talk about with mining lately. I'll just show the Braiins blog one more time. If you ever want to dive deeper into basics of mining or even beyond that, some of the more complex topics, definitely check out the articles in that library there. But yeah, I'm almost always on Twitter. If you want to reach out with any questions, definitely follow the Slush and Braiins accounts. And thanks for watching the conversation, Tone. It was a fun chatting with you. All
right, excellent. And Gandalf.
Yeah, I'll just second the Braiins blog. So I knew very little about mining back in the last summer, and after I joined Braiins, I used the blog as sort of my mining university. So I highly encourage anyone who wants to learn more about mining to go check out those blog posts. They're great. And yeah, go and follow the Slush Pool account, the Braiins account, and the BMC mining conference, the Bitcoin mining conference account.
I think I'm sharing the wrong screen. Shit, hold on. I was sharing my health of my own stream on there. My bad. Where are we here? Here we go. I'm like pulling up the blog. I'm pulling up your Twitter profile.
You've got all the tabs open.
But meanwhile, I'm sharing because it looked like the chart looked like this, like one of these charts. So I shared the wrong screen. My bad, guys. All right,
all good.
There's the blog.
Yeah. So with the Bitcoin mining conference, the physical attendance is going to be by invite only, but we're going to do we're partnering with Bitcoin Magazine for the live stream. So the whole event will be live stream for free. So anyone who wants to watch the talks and stuff can do so.
Wait, I'm trying to find a link to that. Here we go. Bitcoin mining conference right there.
That's the one.
Yep, right there. So it'll be live streamed. Go ahead and check that out. All these links are over in Twitter.
Yeah, and thanks very much for having us, Ten. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, and
it was a lot of fun.
Keep doing all that content, man. It's awesome.
Will do.
All right. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Hopefully, I'll see more of you at Unconfiscatable, playing poker with me and other amazing players. And see you in Vegas in about